So, welcome everyone to my Li-Ming talk for CCS Dev Days. Day is 23rd of October. I'll be talking about Li-Ming, about Li-Ming's talents, about why you should play Li-Ming, about her draft, about her playstyle, what each ability does and how you should use them. A lot of tips and tricks in this one. Li-Ming is definitely a hero dear to my heart. So first of all, who am I? I'm Mindhawk. I think most people in the chat channel already know me, but I am a Masters Clash player. I play in Grandmasters. I have played 135 levels of Li-Ming at this point, about 700 games. A lot of them solo, a lot of them duo, a lot of them in competitive. I play in a team, inting for Ruby. And yeah. So, contents, what is going to be in this talk? So first of all, an overview of the hero in general. I'm going to be taking each ability individually. I'm going to be talking about them. I'm going to be talking about her build, about her power spikes, and a lot of miscellaneous tips and tricks. Though I will also be covering a lot of those during the abilities part. And then we'll have some time for questions. And if we have a decent amount of time left, I will be playing a quick match, and I will be encouraging you to ask questions during that as well. Especially about my gameplay, I'll be trying to explain a little bit why I'm doing stuff and what I'm doing. So first of all, Li-Ming. Li-Ming is a hero. She has situational wave clear. You need to be able to land constant skill shots. She has a very high talent variety with a lot of flexible tiers. Li-Ming is an extremely safe hero if played properly. She snowballs if you're ahead, and you need very high game knowledge if you want to take Li-Ming to her limits. What I mean by that is, if you're playing the pokey version of Li-Ming, because Li-Ming has a lot of versions, right? So she has very high talent variety. Her playstyle changes quite drastically based on which talents you're picking. So there is a large number of players that play the Orb built Li-Ming with the long-ranged constant orbs, etc. And this playstyle requires a lot lower game knowledge. However, you also have the Calamity playstyle, etc. If you Calamity in as a very squishy hero, using your only escape as a damage tool, and you do that at the wrong time, you're just gonna die. However, it is also an extremely high burst and high octane playstyle, where you can very easily turn a teamfight around by yourself. So first of all, her trait, Critical Mass. Critical Mass, you get a reset upon every kill. Now this trait has a very high skill testing element, because you need to predict when you are going to get resets and need to plan out when you want to use your abilities. And you want to plan out the next target after your current one in advance. So what I mean with that is, if you throw, say, your Q and your W on an enemy, and that enemy dies to it, you don't want to be spending 1, 2, or even 3 seconds finding a new target to hit. You already want to be in a position where you can hit a new target. And if your allies are killing someone on the other side of the team fight, you want to be aware of this so that you can throw out your spells, get the reset, and then immediately throw out another set of spells, instead of getting a reset while your cooldowns are up. Her trait leads to very snowbally fights, especially because a lot of her damage is AoE. So if you get 1 kill, you are likely to get a lot more. If you get 0 kills, it is very hard for you to get more. Q, Magic Missiles. Magic Missiles is a very high burst, but it's also a very high skill cap ability, right? So the overall DPS throughput on Magic Missiles is pretty insane for a basic ability. I believe it has 147 base damage, which, because you have 3 missiles and a 3-second cooldown, is 147 DPS. It's one of the highest DPS abilities in the game, but it's also really hard to actually use. It's single target if you want to burst, because all 3 missiles need to hit the same target. It can be hard to lead your skill shot, etc. But you really want to be using Magic Missiles off cooldown, because of its 3-second duration. If your team engages, you will nearly always be able to use it on the engaged target, regardless of whether or not you just use it for something else. It's also a really good objective channel interrupt. And what I mean with that, if, say, there's a Cursed Hollow objective or an Alterac Pass objective, it's really hard to block magic missiles because there's 3 separate angles that you need to cover. And the range is just really long. W, Arcane Orb. So Arcane Orb is situational wave clear, whose trigger radius grows as the orb grows. So what I mean with that is when the orb grows larger, the amount of the radius in which the orb will explode also grows larger, as well as the damage radius for the orb. I'll be showcasing this on minions in just a little bit to showcase how you can use Arcane Orb in a wrong manner on waves because of this fact. You want to use Arcane Orb usually out of vision. That doesn't have to be in a bush, but it can also just be over walls or behind your tank when they are focusing on other things, etc. Because when other people are demanding attention, that is also a form of being out of vision. Also keep in mind it is a delayed burst. You can do instant damage in melee range with Arcane Orb, but it will be very little. It will be rather unimpactful, and you only really want to do that if there is a reset happening from that. Teleport. Teleport is an extremely strong ability. It is mobility. It disjoints projectiles, with which by that I mean if a tower is hitting you, if a Sylvanas is using her Shadow Dagger, her W on you, if any auto attack is flying towards you and you teleport, that projectile no longer hits you. It hits the ground where you were standing instead. And that means that you can dive under tower, maybe even get a kill, for example, and you can teleport back out without the tower ever hitting you. It's also a very strong damage finisher. It's one of the highest damage numbers on a basic ability with Calamity. And in general, it just allows you to dodge nearly everything because of its very low cooldown, especially if Aether Walker. And it also lets you reposition for hitting skills. So if you want to, for example, get out of vision so that you can use your WQ, you can teleport into a bush, immediately double Q from that bush, etc. There are also a lot of areas on maps where you can teleport through walls even without Illusionist, and I will be showcasing quite some of these locations. Disintegrate. Disintegrate, I feel, is the weaker ult. It's also the more popular ult. So it's a self-route. You cannot move while using Disintegrate, but it's very powerful wave clear. It's only a 20-second cooldown, so it's actually usable as wave clear. The actual full damage from Disintegrate is pretty high, but it's also really awkward with resets because when you're using Disintegrate and you get a reset, you have to cancel your Disintegrate, not accidentally recast that, say, another Disintegrate, and use your QWE during that. Wave of Force, on the other hand, is a lot better when you're getting resets. So Wave of Force is an interrupt. You can interrupt Mosh Pit with it, you can interrupt Objective with it, you can finish enemies with it. It's nearly instant damage, it's only a quarter of a second delayed, but it's also quite low damage, especially for how much mana it costs. And the same is true of Disintegrate. Disintegrate and Wave of Force both cost 80 mana, which might not be a lot on its own, but for how often you can use these abilities in quick succession, your ultimates are what is going to be eating your mana while you're getting resets. So while your Q only costs 20 mana, Arcane Orb only costs 40 mana, and Teleport only costs 30 or 0 with Aether Walker, your ults are going to be more than the 3 of those combined if you have Aether Walker, and about the same if you don't. For a single ability cast, often with a lot less impact, because a full cast of Disintegrate will do less damage than a full hit of magic missiles in the early levels. However, the ults also scale a little bit higher than your basic abilities. And by that I mean, when you gain a level, usually all of your abilities gain a 4% damage boost, but Li-Ming's ultimates gain a 5% damage boost, her Q gains 3.5%, and her W and E gain 3%. which means that Li-Ming falls off a little bit as the game progresses, but it's not that impactful. For builds, so you'll notice that I have 5 builds here. And by standard, I mean the most standard build. It was that was usually played during HGC. That is generally still recommended by a lot of people. And then I have E, Q, and W build. These are the most popular iterations of these builds. And then I have AA build, which is the build I personally prefer and which I will be explaining why I like it so much. But the 3 builds in the middle, E build, Q build, and W build, are honestly almost caricatures of builds, right? So I don't believe Li-Ming has a quantifiable E, Q, or W build, because nearly all of the talents in these builds can be picked in other builds, and you'll see that in just a little bit. So the standard build is roughly this. This is roughly considered the meta build, and you pick basically whichever level 1. On level 4, some players are still sticking to dominance, but dominance has really fallen off with its latest nerf to be current percent health instead of maximum percent health. But Triumvirate, the W4 talent, has really caught on, and it's just a really strong talent in general. So if Arcane Orb travels a little bit less than half of its maximum range, you'll get a full mana reset, which is very impactful on Li-Ming because she does have mana issues, and 5-second cooldown reset. On level 7, Calamity has always been considered the best talent. On level 10, Disintegrate has actually overtaken Wave of Force in popularity recently, but I still think Wave of Force is, as a general talent, better. Level 13, a lot of Li-Ming players are still clinging to Illusionist. There's nothing wrong with the talent. It is a strong talent. Extra range on Li-Ming gives her extra range to get Calamity on, to get out. Sometimes you get the reset, though the reset's a little bit unreliable because of how it works. And on level 16, Mirror Ball gives you the highest burst on that talent here. And then on level 20, Talra Shaw's is a nice damage boost but not too impactful, and Repulsion is a very strong playmaking ability. E build is when you take the level 16 Diamond Skin with all of the other E talents. So the reason why I call this a little bit of a caricature is because you pick all of the talents with the E symbol on them, but the level 1, 7, and 13 are basically considered just a standard build, but your E is not what you're most interested in. It's not your main source of threat, it's not your main source of damage even. So if you're picking E build to match pictures, right, to just get as many E talents as possible, there's not really something to be gained from that. And in fact, I would argue that Diamond Skin, while a good talent on its own, you pick it in reaction to something in the enemy team, and often you'd want a different level 13, usually Cannoneer, to actually get value out of Diamond Skin, because you don't have that much threat with this build, because you lack a strong damage level 16. Q build, Q7 is basically the entirety of Q build, and the big problem with this build is how unreliable it is. So your Q does about half a Calamity worth of damage if you hit all 3 Qs on the same target. So that's half a Calamity of damage extra. And while that is very neat, the amount of Qs that you actually land on a single target is fairly low. The main reason to pick Q build is if you want structure or PvE damage, because the Seeker talent on level 7 is the only talent that provides damage to non-heroes. Because Seeker triggers on the Immortal, it triggers on Cannon Towers, etc. And while Li-Ming's Q normally deals half damage to structures, the level 7 Seeker does not. However, between the level 4 and the level 7, there's a huge mismatch in playstyle. So the level 4 Q talent wants you to spread out your Qs, get multiple marks on enemies, and deal bonus damage with auto attacks, which means getting up close. The level 7 wants you to use all of your Qs on the same target. And stay away from them so that you can very safely poke, because you don't have a damage tool on your E. And thus you have no threatening burst finish ability. This means that Q4 and Q7 honestly are unpickable together. And Q build, as it were, doesn't really exist. Also, Q1 has no synergy with the rest of the talents whatsoever. Arguably, the only talent that has synergy with the Q7, which is this build's defining talent, is Q16 Fireflies, which most Q build Li-Ming players aren't even picking. So this is a really weird build that I would never recommend. And then we have W build. So W build is what most Li-Ming players in the lower divisions and lower ranks are playing, and the main reason for that is because Calamity is just a really hard ability to use. So the defining feature of this build is W7, the talent that reduces shaves 1 second off of your W baseline, so from 8 to 7, which stacks up with the W4 to reduce the cooldown to 2 seconds if you hit it on an enemy hero while it's traveled half its distance. Now, there is one really big issue in this build, and does anyone here know what I'm talking about? I was hoping Bram would get this one at least.
Oh, wait. I know you die because you have the glass cannon. That's gonna be kind of tough.
Oh, that's one of the things.
And if you have a bunch of like W talents, then it's gonna kind of be, if you miss it, that's gonna kind of suck because you don't get the level 4 Triumvirate. You don't get the, level 16, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the primary talents highlighted here as selected don't work together. And the level 4 and 7 have okay synergy together. The level 13 has okay synergy with those. But then a lot of players are picking Disintegrate with this. And a big problem with Disintegrate plus Glass Cannon is that you cannot move away from danger. Right, so you self-root, you take a lot of damage, and then you're useless. Also, as Bram said, if you miss a W, nearly all of your talents become useless. Your Q doesn't provide much threat here. So if you want to play W build for W's build's sake, I would honestly play it most of the time. W4 is a fine talent on its own. W7 you can play instead of Calamity if you're not confident in your Calamity. But then on 13, you often don't want Glass Cannon because it's so unreliable and because you are so easy to punish with it. But the very, very big issue in this build is W16. And as is written on the left, W16 sucks. So if you want to do burst as Li-Ming, you can pick Mirror Ball, do a lot of extra burst damage. If you want to have big moments, you want Mirror Ball, especially if you have Glass Cannon, right? Because then you get the most possible burst damage on a single hero. If you're playing W build to do as much damage over time, as much sustained damage as possible, to poke out the enemy heroes, W16 also doesn't help you there, because then you would want the Q16 Fireflies, which reduces your Q cooldown and makes it much easier to land. And honestly, if you're playing W build, I would nearly always recommend you to play Q16 Fireflies, which makes your Q into your more reliable burst finish damage to get resets. And that is another thing this build really struggles with, is actually killing heroes. So you can do a lot of burst damage, but if an enemy decides to just walk away, there's usually nothing you can really do about it. You don't have Calamity damage, you don't have Cannoneer damage. Your W can be blocked, it can be missed, it can be predicted. Disintegrate can be shut down, you can be punished for using it at all. And that is a very big problem. You don't have a finisher, and you lack decisive threat. This build also really struggles to use resets because, well, if you throw an Arcane Orb from a position and you throw another Arcane Orb from that position, it's very unlikely to hit again. And even if they have someone that, for example, is going to be very easy to hit over and over, such as a Sergeant Hammer, maybe you get the kill on Sergeant Hammer, or maybe her team blocks one orb and you miss out on all of your talents. Or maybe you get the kill on Sergeant Hammer and then you have no one else to kill because all of them have an easy time dodging your skill shots. This is why this build doesn't scale well into higher level gameplay. But the nice thing about this build, not as highlighted, but as I've laid out with the other talents, with Q16 and with either Illusionist or Cannoneer, is that it is just a lot easier to play. Because you don't have to think about enemy threats, what can stun you when you go in, and you don't have to think about your E as an offensive ability at all. However, I want to talk about my favorite build and the build that I take in 90 to 95% of my games, and that's Auto Attack build, which has quite a lot of variety in its talents. And the only reason this is really called Auto Attack build is because of Q13. So this is a build that has a lot of threat and a lot of on-demand burst. So you have Calamity, but you also have undodgeable damage in the form of Cannoneer. And when you land a single Q on an enemy, which often will happen, that you only land a single Q on an enemy and not all three of them, you still get your level 4 to do a lot of work for you. It has a very high skill expression, and it's very sustained damage oriented. And what I mean by that is it does a lot of damage over time, especially if you spec into W4. And a very big thing in this build is also the Q4. So the Q4 means whenever you hit your Q on an enemy, they get marked, and the next time you attack them, you deal bonus damage to them. Now, that means you can spread your Q out over 3 multiple different targets and deal a lot of bonus damage. And that is actually really useful for clearing waves or doing mercenary camps. Unlike the other level 4s, one of which only does something when someone dies, which means you're already winning the team fight, or W4, which only does something in a very specific case when you hit your W from far away, which is unreliable, and often you can't land a second W. Outside of that, this build, while it does like to go in a lot with Calamity and resets, etc., this build takes a lot of advantage of those resets that you can generate with this build. And it doesn't have Glass Cannon, which means that you don't instantly get blown up for a single mistake. You can also pick Mirror Ball in this build, though I wouldn't really recommend it too much, because then you lose a lot of the power in this build, which is a lot of unmissable damage, which I think when you are thinking about Li-Ming from the reset perspective, you'll get less of the extreme highlights where you blow up one target from 100 to 0, and then you blow another target up to 100 to 0, which happens very sometimes with the Mirror Ball Glass Cannon build, for example. However, in this build, you will be getting a lot more resets simply because you can finish off targets that went to 30% and have started to retreat. Your Q can hit them, you can teleport in on them, you can repulsion them towards you, etc. And a really, really big thing is that Cannoneer is unmissable, and I'll be showcasing all of its uses in try mode in just a little bit. So what are Li-Ming's power spikes? I would consider Li-Ming to have her biggest power spike at level 7, Calamity. So when you get Calamity, low health enemy targets start just being opportunities. Right? So if someone is low near you, or if someone doesn't have threat to you, if it's say an Anubarak who already used his Q and E, if it's a Butcher even who doesn't have his E and he just used his Q, you can use Calamity as a free 300 burst, and 300 burst is a lot every single time, especially if you can keep A4 Walker up. Level 16, whichever level 16 you pick, except if you pick Arcane Orbit, has a lot of impact on your build. So if you pick Mirror Ball, which is the most popular talent, you'll be adding a lot of burst to your optimal situation. If you're picking Fireflies, this adds about the same damage over time on non-hero targets, which you can always hit, for example buildings or minion waves or mercs or immortals, objectives. But it will make you hit your Q so much more to where your actual damage output skyrockets. And the other level 16 diamond skin makes it so that you can actually constantly go in, dance around a lot of enemy heroes who don't have very high burst damage but could weigh you down over time, or you can pick it to stop, say, a Zeratul from one-shotting you. Level 13, I have Cannoneer written down. However, Illusionist is also quite a nice power spike. But the reason why Cannoneer I think is so big is because Li-Ming is a hero which, as soon as you reach a certain damage threshold of damage dealt to enemy targets, you hit a threshold where you get a reset on enemy heroes. And as soon as you get over that bump, you get a reset and you get an opportunity to deal even more damage. So every single time that you get just enough damage for a reset, your damage skyrockets because you get another full ability rotation in. And Cannoneer I found is often that damage bump that you need to get to your first reset. Especially because you can preload Cannoneer and have it do more burst damage than even glass cannon, which I'll be showcasing in just a little bit. And your level 20 Repulsion, I would have this higher up, but the main reason why I don't consider it to be our highest power spike is how hard it is to use. So Repulsion makes your Wave of Force, if you've picked Wave of Force, knock back 2.5 times further than it normally would, and gives you double the range. And that means you can put targets out of position from a very high distance. However, it's extremely finicky and hard to use, and you can just as easily save people with it as make a kill with it if you don't, if you aren't used to it. It's definitely an ability that you don't get many opportunities to use, but if you use it wrongly, you get either nothing done or you save enemies with it. And that stops it from being a very strong power spike. It's an ability that you can and should drill either with friends or in try mode to get a very good feel on how it works and how you can use it to your advantage. Some tips and tricks, some miscellaneous ones I'll be going into in-game in just a bit to showcase some stuff. But first of all, your spells have no cast time. So when you cast your Q, when you cast your W, when you cast your E, Li-Ming has a little animation, but these animations don't stop you from auto-attacking, and these animations don't stop you from casting other spells. So there doesn't need to be any delay between your Q and W cast, for example. Another very, very big one is that your Q and W are not visible to enemies while they are over unpathable terrain, if you cast them while you yourself weren't visible. So if you launch an Arcane Orb from the other side of a wall, the enemy literally won't know the Arcane Orb is coming until it's gone over the wall entirely. Also really important is using your Q off cooldown. I see a lot of Li-Mings hold onto their Qs in order to try to predict movement or save it for follow-up, and that's really not what you want to use your Q for. It has to be used off cooldown or you are not providing any value to your team. But with W, it's a lot different, because your W is a lot of high burst if your team gets, for example, a Muradin stun off. Also, a lot of the time Li-Ming can be using auto attacks in between her abilities, even without Cannoneer. I see a lot of Li-Mings who almost refuse to use auto attacks, and that is very much a waste, because any damage Li-Ming gets is damage that gets her closer to a reset, and as soon as you get to the reset, your damage skyrockets. If you want to be landing your ability, the very big thing is take some time, look at some replays even, and just look at how enemies move during teamfights. What causes them to move? Where do they naturally dodge to, etc.? And you'll find that over the course of a game, if you've practiced this, you can start predicting where enemies will move based on where they moved earlier in the game. So this will be different for different ranks, right? Because in higher ranks, people will move towards a more optimal spot. But a lot of players will move very similarly throughout the game when they're reacting to the same situation. So use that to your advantage. Also, you really want to have all of your abilities on either quick cast or on release. Normal cast on Li-Ming can be really awkward because you have so much time in between your abilities that, one, it's hard to use your Q and W right after another, and secondly, when you get a reset, you need to spend some extra time casting your abilities, which may mean that, for example, either you didn't get that reset or you didn't aren't able to use your resetted abilities because they've already walked away. And there's a very big concept that you need to be thinking about when you're thinking about your own positioning, which is that there's a sweet spot range where your E can be both used for follow-up, but it can also be used to escape. So you want to stay at this range where your W will hurt, get a W reset, where your Q is 100% hittable without the enemy being able to dodge it, and where your E can both be used for damage and where your E can be used to escape. Trying to stay in this very limited range of enemies is what I think will enable you to play Li-Ming at our most efficient. So I'll be showcasing some concepts and I'll be taking some questions now.
I actually do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
With the W build, the level 60 talent, which is bad,
Mm-hmm.
does it also affect the level 4 talent? The level 4 W?
Nope. So the Triumvirate says when it has traveled 50% of its base range, which, first of all, it's actually more like 35% of its base range, because what Triumvirate actually means is after Arcane Orb gets 135 bonus damage. So Arcane Orb does 135 damage, and it can gain bonus damage 6 times in its duration. But the last 3 ticks of its travel path all have maximum damage, which means that when Arcane Orb is at about 80% of its travel range, it will do maximum damage, and continue to travel and grow for a little bit, but not gain more damage. However, Triumvirate actually means when Arcane Orb has doubled damage, and it can gain up to 3 times damage. However, Arcane Orbit just increases the amount of times that it can grow its damage. That doesn't make the level 4 need more damage growth to trigger. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
So the big reason why I don't like Arcane Orb and why I would not recommend it at all is that it's actually fairly easy to show in game as well, is that it means that a lot of the time you can use your W but not your 16, and it encourages you to stay out of the sweet spot that I just mentioned. So if we look at our Q range now, I would be able to hit Arthas from about this range, or the minion wave, because Arthas keeps moving. Right, actually we can look at the target dummy. So if I'm standing here, I can hit the target dummy with my Q, which I need to hit the target dummy with my Q, right? But with Calamity, I actually want to stay a little bit closer still. So I want to be staying in about this range to be able to hit my Q and my E. And this is well within W range. However, even if I'm playing at the absolute maximum Q range and dancing around that, you'll find that Arcane Orbit still greatly makes your W so much longer than your Q But you'll get into situations where you're playing so far away from enemies that there is no chance you'll ever be able to hit your Q or your E on the enemies that you are hitting with your W. The last couple of seconds of the W, or well, the last half a second, which it makes it go further, is also really, really easy to dodge for enemies. But you also can't get resets, or even use resets if you're at this far range. Did that make sense? Or does that help answer your question?
Yeah. You already answered it before.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious about the range, if it affects level 4 talent.
Mm-hmm. So that is really the primary reason why Arcane Orbit is, well, not a great talent. But if you are going for, say, a full W build, and you want to burst targets down, then it's actually much better to have either Mirror Ball for your for very high burst damage follow-up on, say, an enemy's friendly hero stun, or Fireflies to make sure you can actually use and get resets. It also makes your W and your Q line up basically perfectly in sync with another so that you can keep spamming both abilities. In the case of Fireflies. And in the case of Mirror Ball, it just means that you have a lot of the burst that you are missing out on by not picking Calamity. Onto some of the tips and tricks. I'll be going into some sandbox games to show off all of the walls you can teleport over. But what I mean by maximizing hitting the wave, that if you hit the wave like this, you're gonna hit for maybe 5 sometimes less even minions. And the goal is to have your W hit the entire wave, if possible. So you want to be staying to the side of the wave, but if you're, say, getting so far back that you don't hit, that you only hit 2 minions, for example, you clear the wave really, really slowly. However, there's actually a little trick you can do, which is a little bit hard to show off in try mode because the minions clump up a little bit differently than in real games. See? Okay, you did it fairly well. Which is that if you're close enough, you can have the W travel in between the minions for a while and hit the entire wave at once. Which, as you can see by these backline minions, increases your wave clear speed so much, because you don't have to spend your Q another 3 seconds getting your Q back to kill the minions that your W never hit in the first place.
Should I even be here?
You can take W off of quick cast to check this range, for example. You can play a heck ton of Li-Ming to get used to it, or when you are wave clearing, you can press the W button on the bottom of the screen to aim it without using quick cast for just this once. Because when you're, say, in a team fight, you want to be able to use your abilities without having to spend 5 minutes aiming them. Actually, I still have some things to show off. Bram.
Yeah.
Could you get online and be my guinea pig in try mode?
Sure thing.
Alright, excellent. So first of all, I'll actually be showcasing some rotation paths for Li-Ming. So, Li-Ming's E lets you go over walls on a lot of maps, and Cursed Hollow is actually a notoriously open map for Li-Ming. Nearly all of the walls in this map have a short path for Li-Ming. If I go to faster. So for example, if you look right here, I don't think you can see my cursor in Discord.
The match begins in 10 seconds.
But there is, you can jump through the wall right here. You can jump through the wall right here. You can jump through this up and down wall. You can jump through the wall here. You can jump through this wall. And if you know that you can do that, this map suddenly becomes very open, because normally if you have to get to this tribute, for example, and you are here, you would have to walk either all the way around here, or you'd have to walk all the way around here and over this corner. However, Li-Ming can also just teleport through this wall, for instance. Not every angle of this is a little bit of a thicker side, so you can't always teleport through. But for example, this wall, you can always jump over. And the same is true, of course, on this side. This wall you can jump over. This wall you can jump over, but you can't jump to the left side. And then you can jump into this nook from this side. You can jump over this nook. You can go scout for camp. And you can go into their keep. And all of these walls being jumpable means that you always have an out as well. So say you're fighting some enemies in mid lane and they get you cornered, right? Maybe there's an enemy that comes from down here. You can always jump over your allied walls. So this is another gate for Li-Ming, right? You don't have to explicitly go to this gate to get to safety. You can jump over this. And that's true on every map. But the same is true for a lot of walls in the regular game. So say you're fighting an enemy in mid lane, and suddenly, say a butcher comes from up here, you can just jump over this wall and get out. You can't jump over this wall, this one is way too thick. So you do want to scout these out for yourself, get to know which ones you can and can't jump over. Here you can't jump over, for example. Well, this one you can, but this thick area you can't. Unless you have Illusionist. Now, a lot of the time when I get into arguments about Li-Ming talents, for example, right? People tell me, oh, well, you need Illusionist to jump over walls. And that's just absolutely not true. You need to know which walls you can jump over. This one, you have to be on the correct spot, because this is a deceptively thick wall, for example. But most walls on most maps are actually jumpable without Illusionist. And having an out at every time, or even just being able to get out of vision so that you can land your skill shots or start your skill shots from out of vision so they have less time to prepare, is a really big thing. If anyone has a specific map they want me to showcase, let me know.
I do have a question about the targeting of E when you try to jump over a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know if you aim too far over the wall, it doesn't let you. It doesn't let you jump over. So how does that exactly work?
Too far. It's actually all about angle.
Okay.
So pick, I don't know, someone who can chase a little bit but not over walls.
Sure. I got that.
This realm needs me.
So, do you have a specific wall in mind, or did you have had trouble with?
Not necessarily. It's just, I think, just a couple of the more thicker ones, where you need to be kind of precise with where to place your E. I find it hard to know where the terrain, like where the walls starts and stops, and where the terrain starts and stops.
So, this is a little bit tricky because Li-Ming doesn't get the actual wall vision that some other heroes do, right?
Yeah.
And there's even some walls where you wouldn't expect to be able to go over them, but you can. So if you look at my screen right now, instead of in-game, you'll see that I'm right next to this siege camp here. Mm-hmm. And if we actually look at the the targeting indicator for Li-Ming's E. This is a jumpable wall, but only at a very specific angle. So both your E target and your own hero has to be in a very specific spot to be able to jump this wall. And even if you know exactly where it is, it can be really tricky to jump over this wall.
Okay. So
Right,
it does
so-
actually snap to the furthest point, but you need to be as far out as you possibly can.
Yeah, you always want your E target to be as far out as possible. It'll always snap to maximum cast range. But you need the angle to be correct, right?
Yeah.
So this wall, for example, is not jumpable, but the this nook into it is. And if you actually look, you'll see that there's quite a bit of space that is not wall here. But this here, if I aim upwards, from a little bit down, it'll try to place me to the closest point here that is still within the original cast range of teleport, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
So that's what it actually tries to do. When you cast teleport on a target point, if the point where you are placing it is not pathable, if it's not pathable terrain, it'll try to put you as close as possible to that point in your cast range.
Okay, yeah. So it doesn't let you go over the wall if you've gone over half of it, yeah.
Yeah. I hope that description helps. So if you see right here, this is too far away from pathable terrain, right? This is still unpathable.
Yeah.
So I won't go over. But here, it's just slightly pathable, so I can place.
Cool.
But then if I go back and I do it on slightly the wrong angle, I won't be able to get back. So be very mindful of that. And honestly, I would just recommend people to try out playing all of the maps and just checking every single wall, getting a feel for how reliable that wall is, for example. Because in mid, when I'm doing anything on Cursed Hollow, I will always know these two walls are insanely easy to jump. And I can even get into a bush without people knowing that I'm there at all.
Alright.
So, say you're chasing me. I'm just going to be leading my skill shots to where you're moving, right? But if you're actually starting to threaten me, I'll just jump over a wall and you won't be able to do anything. Keep in mind, if I damaged you in the last about 1 second, the person that you're attacking will still have vision over for you. So if I attack the minion wave and I immediately jump over, Bram should be able to see me when I crossed over the wall.
I think I was out of range, but yeah, I think so.
Did you see me?
And that's when you damage minions.
When I
as
damage
well.
anyone on your team, including your minions. But same thing if Bram goes a little bit up out of vision.
You're out of vision.
Just in the bush, for example. Actually go into the bush. If I damage you, I will get vision of you for a little bit, and you will get vision of me.
Yeah.
And that's how vision in general works in this game. So if you damage someone, they get vision back of you, if it didn't already.
Yeah.
So, specific talent tips. If there's any that I accidentally skipped over that I said I would be doing before, please let me know.
Talent time.
So, Charge Blast, Cannoneer
Talent time.
are two that I think are pretty important. So, say you're Li-Ming and you're doing Siege Camp. The way you actually want to be doing Siege Camp is by hitting one Q on one Siege Giant and the other Q on the other Siege Giant, with Charge Blast specifically. For some reason,
so you get the basic attack.
Charge Blast stopped popping up. Ah, this is Wave of Force, apparently. Okay. So I want to be using the Charge Blast damage on both Siege Giants non-stop. And if I have Cannoneer, which I do right now, I also want to be casting my E off cooldown to get Cannoneer stacks. In fact, with Aether Walker, it's actually faster to just spam E off cooldown than actually mount up to get anywhere on the map. But that can be very tricky to get used to. But right now, I have 3 ticks of Cannoneer charged up. So if Bram comes to me,
Yep.
and I want to fight Bram, I can just Cannoneer and do another instant Cannoneer task. And even though I didn't hit my Q or W, and I just landed 2 auto attacks and an E, he lost half of his health. Just because I preloaded Cannoneer. So just a normal auto attack will only do 120 damage, but if I E 3 times, say in a rotation, or I use my Q and stuff, and I didn't auto attack in between, Cannoneer stacks last forever. So I can start the fight with my 400 burst damage. And that's without using Calamity. Let's see, that's most about the Cannoneer. And same thing when you're clearing minion waves. So if I reset the minion wave for both teams, one should be popping up soon. When you want to actually clear minions,
Awesome work. You earned that talent.
a lot of work for my 16s. Keep in mind, we are at a high level, so the minions will be a little bit weaker than they are early on. But I want to aim my W through the 2 enemy minions here. Hit as many minions as possible. That was a bad hit. And then I want to go to the backline minions, and I want to hit my Q on all of the backline minions so that every auto attack I do on this wave gets the Charged Blast tick. Same thing if I'm sieging, a lot of the time it's going to be better to spread out your Charged Blast ticks, because every structure hit by a Q, because it does half damage to structures, takes 130 damage, right? Or 158. Because I had a Full Walker's damage bonus of 10%. So this is only doing 132 damage, but an auto attack is dealing a bonus 170. So I'm over doubling my Q's damage to structures just by spreading out the Charge Blast tick. And while Q does full damage to minions, so I'll be doing my full 263, I'll still be increasing my wave clear significantly just by using all of the Charge Blast ticks. So Charge Blast gives a hero that normally has very meh wave clear suddenly fairly strong. And keep in mind when you're, say, teleporting in and you maybe don't have time to select a target, you can always just attack move right after your E to at least get your auto attack out, right? And you'll see just how much damage Cannoneer is racking up over this time just from auto attacking off cooldown and immediately getting out of auto attack range again, right? So I can be missing all my skill shots on this Tracer. I only have to land 1 Q and bam, she is missing 30% of her health. It's just really, really nice how unmissable this damage is. Let's see, anything else? Yeah, that's a good one. So I'm going to turn off minions, and if Bram stands still. So if I have Mirror Ball, this actually reduces the effective range of my Q, right? So if I'm standing at the very maximum range, I can hit my 3 original Qs, but I cannot hit the Mirror Balls because they start from further away. The Mirror Balls on the side are also much more blockable because any minion or any summon on the edges will block this, right? So oftentimes if you're near a structure, for example, and I want to be hitting Bram, this Q is just going to spawn in the wall itself, instead of hitting my actual target that I want. This is one really big reason why I like Fireflies. Not only does it trigger Cannoneer, it triggers Charge Blast, but it also increases the effective range of my Q. Because if Bram is right here, and he's walking away from me after I launch my Q, my free walk away, my free original ones might hit. Come back. Walk away. A lot of the time, when they're walking away, or you're predicting their path, walk away, the Q will straight up miss, or only the original one will hit, or only 3 of them will hit. However, if we do the same thing with Fireflies, walk away, your Q catches up to their movement, right? So walk away. Even though they're walking away, and normally your mirror ball hits would have never hit, your normal Q hits only sometimes hit, Fireflies makes it so that while people are walking away, your Q hits a lot more of the time. And that's what I mean with increasing the effective range. Walk away. And that's just a very, very strong bonus. As well as, even when I'm standing, next to their towers, for example, I won't be accidentally hitting their wall because my mirror ball spawns so far away from my actual hero. And in a team fight, that can also just be another hero that's blocking your Qs, right? Not to mention, Fireflies reduces the Q auto attack, the Q cooldown, which gives you more Cannoneer stacks for auto attacks, which is why I really like this build. And even though you might think, oh well, this is, a low burst damage build, it definitely can put out a ton of burst.
I am unstoppable.
I think that is most things covered.
You earned that talent. Talent time.
Another thing is Repulsion. So Repulsion just increases the cast range of your R to absurd ranges. I have Wave of Force on release, not quick cast. And in general, in teamfights, you're just going to be looking to hover a lot with this and see when you can land something. So there is a trick popularized by an old HCC player where you do this. You launch someone with Repulsion into your QW. However, this is absurdly difficult to do, especially on moving targets, right? So I can do it on Bram here, but only because he is standing still and because I've drilled and drilled this over and over on a target dummy. However, if Bram is even moving in just a straight line, this is so much harder to do. You can already see I missed a Q. And if you're doing it towards yourself, it can be even harder because the way Wave of Force works is you cast the ability and then it has a 1/4 of a second delay. But in that 1/4 of a second, your enemy can move a lot. So when you thought they would have been knocked bottom right, instead they moved upwards because they still moved for a 1/4 of a second before your ult got cast. And that makes Repulsion really, really hard to use. So you want to be predicting where they'll be in just a little bit from now in order to knock them towards your team. And that's often what you're trying to do with this. You're not looking to combo onto it yourself. You can knock them towards your team with careful, patient play, and then let your team stun them or do whatever. If you have something like an Oofer or something, you can just stun them for you, and then you can follow up. Because even when I know exactly where dinner is going to be, it is extremely difficult to predict which side my Wave of Force will even knock him. Unless he's standing still, in which case it is fairly doable. But even then, you can see I misjudged, by about the size of his hitbox, which is very small, and missed. I think that's about it. Did anyone have any talents that they still had questions about?
So when do you take Power Hungry and the level 20? I think it's like the one where you chain abilities. Is that like that's so like good or recommended? Because I haven't really heard you talk about it yet.
So Tal Rashal's Elements, which is the 20 that increases your ability damage on chaining cast. You pick this if you don't know how to use Repulsion. And I think it's literally that simple. You pick Tal Rashal's if you have Disintegrate, because the Disintegrate upgrade is absolutely disgustingly bad. I can showcase that actually. And Tal Rashal's is not something you ever need to think about. It just increases your damage, and you can ignore the fact that you have it. I don't think you should be spacing out your abilities in a certain fashion to get that chain of Tal Rashal's up.
Sure. And the level 1 where you get the Power Hungry.
So
I know that it gives you more power, but like it's only temporary, so I don't know how worth it that is.
So I basically always go Aether Walker. And the reason for that is I use E basically off cooldown, both for dodging skill shots, repositioning myself, and getting a Q damage bonus. So a big thing about this game is that in HOTS, damage is additive. So Magic Missile says that the missiles deal 50% damage to structures. So if you take the 300 damage, they'll deal about 146. But if I have the 10% from Aether Walker, or the 10% from Power Hungry, it'll actually be dealing 175, which is 30 more, while you would be expecting 15 more.
Yeah.
So using E and spamming it on buildings makes it do actual respectable siege damage, for example. But also, Aether Walker lets you spam your E very, very hard for all of these tricks, for rotations, for dodging skill shots, and for disjointing projectiles. So if I go into tower range, I can use E and never take structure damage. Even though it's launched projectiles at me, if I do it on time of course, even though it's launched a projectile at me, it'll keep going to where my last position was if I teleport. And this works for every teleport in the game, including Bolt of the Storm. So I abuse this a lot because it also works on stuff like Sylvanas W. Not Heroics though, it won't dodge a Pyroblast like this. But when you would pick Power Hungry, personally I don't like it at all. But it is a nice way to keep your mana up. It is a fairly popular talent. It's a nice way to keep your mana up on a map where you will be getting a lot of globes or you'll be around waves a lot. And the main map for that is Tomb of the Spider Queen, because you're basically always rotating between mid and top, and you'll just get a lot of globes on that map. However, personally, I don't like Power Hungry at all.
Lastly, one thing, I know that you sometimes recommend Triumvirate anyway, but it's only against specific enemies and specific team comps. So what kind of team comps should I be looking out for if I want Triumvirate?
So, personally, I pick Charge Blast about 80% of the time. The remaining 20% of the time, I pick Triumvirate. So Charge Blast has all of the benefits that I've listed, even if you're not going Cannoneer, by the way. It has all of the benefits I've listed before. You can do camps faster, you do a lot more structure damage, you clear waves faster, and it directly increases the amount of burst you deal to a single target. Triumvirate, on the other hand, is the talent where you'll be playing at range a lot, you won't be getting a lot of resets, or you have a very easy to hit target. However, from actually looking at replays and analyzing my own gameplay, I've noticed that often when you get a Triumvirate reset, you're not able to use the orb efficiently. Which is why I personally have started picking it less and less. But it is still a really good talent if, say, if you go to the bottom objective and you try to cap it. If the team fight looks a little bit more like, you know, a standoff, a poke, nothing really happens, and you can just keep chucking orbs at people, especially if you're casting them out of range, etc. Because right here my Q won't always hit because this wall is really thick. The W has slightly more range. But the better enemies get at dodging, the worse Triumvirate gets, right? Because if they dodge, not only do you not have a level 4 at all, but you need to wait even longer before you can hit again. But there are specific heroes and specific comps that I would recommend Triumvirate for. That being, if you're up against a Sergeant Hammer, Triumvirate is a really good talent. If they have a frontliner with no easy engage and with nothing that blocks skill shots, say a Garrosh, Triumvirate is a lot easier to pick. Or if they have someone with very predictable movement, such as a Mei who will always move in the same way when she uses her E.
Right. And then of course also the objectives. So yeah, like you said, objectives that you have to channel like this for easy interrupts. That's nice. Yeah.
And there's one more thing that I would like to showcase about Triumvirate, and that is, I've talked about it a little bit before, but that it actually resets a lot earlier than you might expect. So this is about halfway range. Or if I get a little bit closer, and this is like 35% of the range. It doesn't reset here. But this is closer than half, and you'll notice that it is dealing exactly double the base damage and resetting, because that is when it resets. So here the angle was a little bit different, right? So if at this range I hit it from the side where it grows just a little bit more, it gets a reset. If I hit it straight on, it won't get a reset. But that's what I dislike about Triumvirate. It's because a lot of the game is about hitting not heroes, and Triumvirate only does something when you're hitting heroes. And it also needs to do something multiple times in order to be a valuable talent.
Yeah.
However, it is just an easy talent to get value out of because you will be hitting long-range orbs throughout a game sometime, right? I just prefer having more wave clear, having more boss damage, doing more structure damage, etc. However, you do need to already be playing in melee range and already using your auto attacks to get value out of that.
Right. You said the level 20 disintegrate was really bad. Why?
So the way the talent is written might make you think that it actually does something, right? So disintegrate gradually slows enemies caught in its beam to a maximum of 60 seconds. So if we put you to full health and you are at maximum range away from me, and we look at your info panel, currently you're moving at 100% speed. So if you start moving towards me, you'll notice that 60% is reached as soon as the ability is done. So, and for the first second it's on you, the slow is nearly non-existent. So move towards, get back, and start moving towards me. So the slow only ramps up to something that is worth mentioning about when you're in it for 2 seconds. And if you blink to the side even once while doing this, walk towards me.
Yeah.
Wait, blink to the side. The slow is instantly removed if my R is not on you for even a quarter of a second. So if you just walk, it'll keep resetting if I don't have it on you for the entire duration. So the 60% is actually basically a lie. You won't even reach 60%. You can at most reach 59% because the ability doesn't last long enough to reach that 60%.
And it resets to 0 when someone moves out of it for even a single tick.
Yes. And that is what is really bad about Temporal Flux. It used to be a flat 40%. So whenever anyone was in it, it was 60% for a while, nerfed to 40%, and then nerfed to its current version. But when it was anyone that is in it is slow by 60%, it was really good. Now that it is, anyone that's in it is slowed for 10% for the first second, and then it starts becoming a useful talent. That is not a pickable talent. Just pick 20% bonus damage in that case.
Sure.
Or even meme with the overall upgrade, the better Disintegrate upgrade, which is
Yeah.
Infinite Disintegrate. So this, the only use for this is structure damage. When you're ending and you're out of mana, this can be pickable. But also, I cannot dual a Tracer with this, so if we're both full health and Tracer actually starts trying to hit me and dodge ult, I get her to half health because it really sucks.
I also picked no talents there, so.
But if I just use my my abilities as normal, wait, where Tracer?
I'm here.
I can actually burst her down.
Yeah.
The enemy down a peg or two.
And Li-Ming's basic abilities are just stronger than Disintegrate, especially at 20 where all of your basic abilities are upgraded, while Disintegrate is still the same Disintegrate as it was at 10. Does anyone else have some questions? Else I'll be going into a quick match and just talking about my gameplay.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
The teleport. Can it dodge a cocoon
No.
from a Nubarag?
It used to be able to. You actually used to be able to dodge Cocoon. However, the general... the decision Blizzard has made is to make all heroic targeted abilities undodgeable with stuff like teleport, and all basic abilities and auto attacks dodgeable with teleport.
Alright.
So another big one, for example, is if you're playing against a Nova and she launches pinning shot at you, you can dodge this with teleport and not get this 40% slow, which is often enough to kill you. And tower shots are the big one that you will be facing the most. Because most other abilities are not point and click, or are instant point and click. Most things don't fly towards you. Trying to think if this third one I can even think of.
What about Fireball?
Fireball?
Pyroblast, I think he means.
Oh, Pyroblast. Pyroblast is an ultimate, so it does not get dodged by teleport.
Thank you.
And that is the general thing. So the main matchup that this knowledge actually really changes is actually the Sylvanas matchup. Actually, I'll showcase that with Bram. Bram, do you have Sylvanas?
Let's find out.
Else I'll play Sylvanas.
Sylvanas, I do.
Nice. So if we just do a quick 1v1 against each other, Sylvanas depends a lot on hitting her W, and it's also a fairly slow traveling projectile, so it's easy to dodge.
Welcome to Heroes of the Storm. Get ready for battle, and don't forget your
Fastest game speed because we have to wait our 30 seconds. But Sylvanas, if she doesn't land her W, usually doesn't actually have enough threat to really hurt Li-Ming. But if she connects her W, especially if she has W related talents, will screw over Li-Ming really, really hard.
3, 1. May the best team win.
So if I just duel Sylvanas without anything else, and we just hit each other, it'll be very hard for Li-Ming to do anything.
It's okay. You got this.
However, if we repeat the same scenario, but I actually try to dodge auto attacks and W, this was a fail. Failed dodge. That's a successful dodge. She will go on full cooldown, by the way. So if you dodge it on response, Sylvanas loses a lot of her actual threat. However, she obviously has counterplay in using her W after you use your E. It is tricky. It requires you to be very aware of the Sylvanas. But if we just do a little duel, you can even just dodge her auto attacks, or stay out of her auto attack range altogether, or break her Q. So it's a really useful knowledge to have. But the most applicable it'll be, because it applies to every single game, is tower shots, which you can tank for your teammates, and then promptly not tank because you blink.
Everyone will do.
That guy did.
Bram, will you join me?
This round needs
Sure. Yeah, why not? Sure.
Any questions you have about the game that I'm playing, anything that I'm doing, feel free to ask questions.
Could I ask, how would you match against Zeratul? How would you match up against that?
Zeratul. So Zeratul in general is fairly problematic hero for Li-Ming to deal with because, teleport doesn't do anything against Zeratul. If he connects his W, usually you're just going to die. Zeratul is often a hero you can pick Force Armor against to drastically reduce his actual burst damage towards you and make you live through his initial burst. If he stays on you, will still die. But it does give you the time to, say, get saved by a teammate, and often if you spot a Zeratul, you want to either reveal him with a wide Q, cast beyond the maximum range to make the Q go in 3 straight lines, so that it has the most chance of hitting him, and then teleport away. And in any case, you want to flee towards teammates. The point in the matchup where you can actually do something against Zeratul, especially in auto attack build where he cannot dodge your stuff, is level 16, where you can get Diamond Skin and actually duel him somewhat, especially together with Cannoneer. However, you'll still be looking to dodge his auto attacks, keep walking away from him to dodge his stuff, and minimizing damage on yourself to win that. Okay, good. I am actually recording.
I'm Kevin from the Heroes Dev team, and I'm here to announce
Else the past hour wouldn't have been recorded. So this game, I'm just going to go for a standard Aether Walker. There's not a particularly high number of walls to jump over. In fact, nearly none of these walls are jumpable. They're all really, really thick in comparison to, say, Cursed Hollow. So this wall, for example, right here, is not jumpable. This wall is extremely thick, not jumpable. The walls here are not jumpable. So Li-Ming is a lot less mobile on Warhead Junction than on Cursed Hollow. And that's an important thing to keep in mind while you are selecting your hero for the map, right? So I'm looking to just poke the wave. I don't really care about the enemy heroes. I'm teleporting to get bonus damage on my Q, clear the wave a little bit faster. Dodging the minion auto attack so to keep Aether Walker up. And gonna collect the XP, then head bot lane. So I could be mounting up, but mounting up loses you a full second of movement, while Aether Walker is gonna get me there roughly at the same time. Gonna keep moving in auto attacks to hit the minions, hit the minion wave while it's still conga lining from the side, hit 6 minions. And I'm just gonna keep walking away from the Haka because I don't want anything to do with him, I just want to hit the minions. I see that my top lane could maybe use my help, so I'm just gonna head there. Especially since Dinner went to bot lane. There's nothing really I can do here, I don't want to clash with a Lily, so I'll go back bot lane. accidentally not teleport over the wall, so I missed my W. My bad. And I'm just going to stay at range from the Haka, not let him auto attack or W me, so that I can keep casting E. I predict that he's going to walk there because he was walking in a straight line, and he's going to land right here. I mistimed my Q a little bit, but we still get a reset. So when someone is walking in your vision, but they're not in your vision, you're not in their vision, that is when you can make these predictive hits on them, right? So I'm just going to keep walking away from the Dahaka and hit him while he is trying to get towards me. He can't land a single thing on me, but that's how I hit the Mephisto, for example. I'm going to tap just because I'm getting from spamming Q and W on waves, mostly. Definitely is someone you can hit fairly reliably, just like Hammer, which we talked about earlier. When Mephisto uses his Shade ability, and when Deathwing uses his Q abilities, are times where you can 100% hit them. So Abathur walked in, didn't get the chance to hit him, but we'll get the chance to hit this Mephisto. So I put the W in his path where he was walking, and I put his Q where I thought he was going to be in the next half second, which is about the travel range, travel time of the Q. I didn't hit as many minions as I wanted, but I also couldn't get the angle that I wanted because of the wall. I'm going to help top lane. I don't have an ult yet, so I can't interrupt the nuke, which I could do with Wave of Force. Now I have Calamity, which I can definitely use in this case to just do some poke damage. I don't have to E on top of them. Calamity has quite a wide radius around your hero where it will hit them, which is what I'm going to be abusing. So sadly Abathur kind of made the difference here. And Mephisto rotated up, which was unfortunate. But still, we're ahead on map. Even though we're sadly missing a little bit of XP, but that's fine. This is a map where teamfights don't really happen too much. So that's a little bit harder to showcase here. But in lane you roughly want to be focusing on the heroes, because early game especially, you'll not be getting resets. And you won't be able to use resets, so you need a lot of your talents to threaten like that. Calamity, for example. So we're 4 people here, which means we're missing XP in one lane. Which is why I'm going bot lane.
Oh, okay.
Top lane isn't much to be done. I don't think I would have made a difference there. I'm spreading out my Q on many targets. And I can rotate top lane. This is not a jumpable wall. Lily is going to be hard to hit with the most skill shots because she has the permanent movement speed from her trait when she's being hit. We have too many people top again, so I'm going to go bot lane, catch the XP that Tahaka is throwing into our towers. Very nice.
An excellent strike.
I use my E to get into Q and W range for the Deathwing. And I can be poking here a little bit, hoping my Charisma will heal me at some point. I didn't have my ult because I already used it, so I couldn't interrupt that. Dodge for Lily ult. Sadly, I didn't have my Wave of Force in time to interrupt his ult. If I did, he would have a 2-minute cooldown. That's the 10-second cooldown nerf to Wave of Force kicking in here.
Work order complete. Warheads fully deployed.
I hope Charisma can make it out.
Enemy new.
I want to soak top lane, but it's a little far out. Just gonna Calamity Mephisto, who's jumping in. Getting into close range of Mephisto stops him from doing damage to me. Vola can handle this on her own. I can go back mid. Mephisto presses E, I'll be able to do some burst damage to him. Whereas I can just keep hitting with the Haka. He was standing still. Sadly, I did miss my E. I'm scared of entering that bush because there could be an Abathur mine in there. Sadly, I didn't dodge her E with my teleport. That would have caused me to live and let me auto attack earlier. That is simply my bad. So Lily E is another targeted ability that you can dodge with teleporting. Don't think I'm needed top. I want to head bottom, but I kind of want to see if we can make something happen here, because we're a little far behind. A kill could get us a lot of XP at this point. Don't think I can make a difference there. I think soaking bottom is much more important. And I'll just be harfing at this point. Pistol does do a lot of damage if you're not near a healer. In this game, because the fights are so scrappy, there's no real team fights happening, and a lot of the fights turn out to just be brawls about trading health pools, I'll be picking Diamond Skin. So auto attack helped kill off the Deathwing there. Bottom needs defense against the Abathur. Push.
All warheads have now been killed.
Can interrupt his dig, get the thingamajig killed. That is a useful use of the ult. While traveling, I can keep the permanent 25% shield up because it refreshes every time I press E. If a walker, make sure it stays below a certain cooldown because the shield lasts 4 seconds.
soon as you can. You got
I should have teleported a little bit earlier, would have given me a big shield, dodged the auto attack. That's a little bit awkward. They might be able to do a boss. Though they don't seem to be going for that, they seem to be pushing top. I don't think we'll lose our keep over this, which is very nice. Oi oi. But as long as we focus on the wave here, we'll definitely be able to defend. I don't want to get the Hawker dragged. I wasn't able to dodge enough. If I got back to the equal, then I definitely would have lived. But the Mephisto Q does a lot of damage. And I tanked just a little bit too much of the Deathwing Q damage on allies, which is a 16, so my allies were exploding. So that I was taking damage from that.
So I noticed you didn't go Triumvirate, which makes sense because it's a really big map and you're not going to have a lot of, like, you know, coordinated team fights, I guess. But they do have, like, a really huge hitbox on Deathwing, so I guess that alone is not enough to, you know.
No, so the problem is because this is, first of all, this is a very uncoordinated game, but I'm hitting waves a lot, right? So I want the macro of Charge Blast.
Right.
And in 1v1 duels, it's very hard to trigger Triumvirate because there's nothing to get attention for you so that you can be landing your long-range Ws. So long-range Ws are very rare in a straight-up 1v1,
Right.
which happens a lot on this map. Also, it doesn't work against Abathur.
Fair.
Are now ready for collection.
So the enemy has 3 nukes, probably 4. I'll be looking to interrupt them with a wave of force. Oh, we found him. Would very much like to be getting this Mephisto. Sadly, I'm being soloed a little bit by my teammates, but that's okay. I misplayed quite a bit there. I went a little bit too deep on the enemies. I also used my Wave of Force wrongly. I had it queued up. Didn't cancel it in time. Because it was no longer going to be a good Wave of Force. Oh, the Hawker should die here.
Catapults in that lane.
And then it's going to be flanking them from behind. Going to give us some chase space. Sadly, Leoric does seem intent on tanking all of the Deathwing Q.
All of it.
Did he get 100 to 0?
Yeah, he did.
Ooh, yikes. Wait, Illidan too?
Okay.
So I know that Mephisto will probably be casting his ult very soon. So I won't be using Wave of Force until then. Unless he dies, of course. Tank the damage with my E, but sadly I hit my Vala, which was really bad.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Was able to burst together with the Vala. Sadly, our lanes are in a really bad spot. So we do have to deal with those. Boss is up in 1 minute 15. If we get that, we can still win this game.
Yeah, but turn the top.
They got a key. Time to focus.
Deployment near completion.
Lost the key. Nothing you can't handle.
I want to be harassing this Deathwing.
Update. Warhead system deployed. Attempt update.
Can do a lot of damage to him over time. This is the Haka with his thingamajig. I can get him off of me with Repulsion. Sadly hit him against the wall.
Health returns. All warheads have been claimed.
Within hate's
Was able to get Mephisto down.
Our core is under attack.
Still looking for the Deathwing. Our core is under attack, but it's being dealt with. The Hawkeye wasted his nuke. Very nice. Don't think we really want to be chasing him. If possible, I would like to do boss. However, we do need our Illidan or our Vala on that. Don't think we really want to be doing that.
Yeah, I don't have the level 7E, so I don't have the infinites.
I think we can still do the boss actually. Don't think I'll be expecting it. If I come, I do think we have to
Yeah,
have
they're here.
However, we definitely don't want to give it to them.
No. Got everything up.
There is the Alpha flanking bolts.
Yeah, this is pretty bad. Oh, I guess the death point. Coming.
Was able to stay alive with the shields long enough. Now I really want to die for this. Or it's not really going to be possible to get away from the Lily in this case. If I had walls to jump over, this would be a lot easier team fight. Sadly, all of these walls are unjumpable.
Yeah.
I
Still, the
hope Illidan can get him.
diamonds can give you so much survivability there. It's really good.
Sadly, we do have 5 catapults on core.
Oh yeah.
So that's GG.
Oh well.
Especially since we're not being dealt with in time.
Available for collection
No.
now.
Well, maybe they don't live. Just used ult from core. Now, of course, you know, this is a very hard game because it's quick match. The team comps are really weird. It's just an assassin slugfest. There's no tank to play off of, and it's warheads, so the whatchamacallit, teamfight aspect of the game is non-existent. But I think a lot of mechanics were showcased in this game, so I hope that helps you on your journey to become a better Li-Ming. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.